Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. Before we dive into this week's dose, I want to talk real quickly about loyalty. For those of you out there that are trying to figure out how to craft a good program that gets people engaged, creates referrals, drives additional revenue for your business through your existing customers, and you've tried a lot of other solutions, there's something you need to be aware of, and that company is called Upzelo. Upzelo is an e-commerce loyalty, membership, and referral app that creates greater engagement with your customers by leveraging digital loyalty cards on Apple and Google Wallet. What do digital loyalty cards do? Well, basically, you're able to send a push notification right to somebody's phone. You're able to trigger a lot of different behaviors based on those things like special offers based on the location that that person is. And your actual customers will be able to use their phone and that digital loyalty card to show people and add them through their referral links right there on their phone. There really isn't another way to engage directly with your consumers on the place where they're living, their phone, in a way that drives greater engagement and sales for your business. I highly suggest you take a look at Upzelo today. They're actually running a special for all of my listeners and readers here. If you use the code DRSUB, DRSUB, on Upzelo, I'll have a link to them in the show notes. And you can also get 25% off for 3 months. They'll set up everything free for you so you can see how it's working. And go check out my newsletter because I'm including some specials on case studies related to what they've been doing and what they've been successful so far. So highly recommend giving Upzelo a try if you're looking for ways to get better at loyalty and better with engagement for your customers. All right, welcome to another dose of Subscription Prescription. I'm your host, Matthew Holman. This is the podcast where we try to help you figure out all things related to direct-to-consumer subscriptions. And on this week's dose, we're going to be talking about personalization, zero-party data, and quizzes. And I'm really excited to be joined today by Blake Imperl, the VP of Marketing at Digio. Blake, thanks for coming on, man.
Matthew, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. For those of you that do not know Blake, I have been following for quite some time in the D2C space. He's worked at a number of companies, including Caro, Wonderment, does a lot with content. Definitely a guy I highly recommend giving a follow to. Blake, if you wouldn't mind, please just spend a little bit of time introducing yourself to our listeners and readers.
Totally. Well, big fan of the pod, big fan of you and your work. I've been a fan of yours from afar as well for quite some time, and awesome we got to be introduced more recently and doing this pod today. For those who don't know me, as Matthew mentioned, VP of Marketing at Digio. I have a really weird path to getting to SaaS marketing. I'm actually a failed musician turned D2C retention marketer turned SaaS marketer. So I've kind of made my way from scrambling to, kind of pay my rent to be able to, I'll be able to do things, here at Digio. It's been an awesome journey, very humbling, but one that I think has given me a different lens on like the SaaS space and how we communicate to brands at Digio. So I think we've been doing things a little bit differently here. I got my career started actually owning an agency and working with D2C brands like Autobrush, an oral care company. I've been since part of a couple acquisitions, Tone going to Attentive. When I was at Attentive, I was in the partnerships team over there, met our CRO here at Digio, Allison Kelly. Allison and I have been building stuff for quite some time together. She's awesome, and I go anywhere with her. So we're building that here at Digio now. But yeah, as Matthew mentioned too, I've worked at companies that you probably have in your tech stack today, like Attentive, like Wonderment, Caro even too. Right. I'm a big proponent of just being helpful and being a shepherd of knowledge. So sitting in that D2C marketer seat, I'm trying to bring that here to educating people, and here at Digio as well, building what we call marketing efficiency, a whole new kind of way of thinking about marketing. And leveraging data and personalization in a much more intelligent way built for 2024. So a little bit about me, humble guy. I live in Portland as well. Just moved up here. So really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so Autobrush, the auto to, that's funny. I actually worked with them this year on their subscription program.
Amazing. So Chris and the team are awesome people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really cool product. Really love what they're doing. It's one of those fun times where I was auditing all these things and they're doing so many things right. So we were actually able to get a little bit deeper into some of their opportunities.
That's awesome.
And then, yeah, it was in fact, it was the marketing efficiency kind of like report that you guys rolled out was the initial reason I had reached out to see if you'd come on the podcast.
Mhm.
So I'd like to kind of kick this off. I was talking to a brand with around 25,000, 30,000 subscriptions about a month ago. And they asked me this question, like personalization. What more can we do with personalization? And for me, I'd love to get your take on this initially. Like personalization is one of those buzzwords. I feel like AI has eclipsed all buzzwords recently, but personalization is like, one of those things that people say, but what does that really mean for you? And from a marketing efficiency standpoint, what is personalization and how does that actually really work?
Totally. That's a great question. And I think there's so many right answers to it. But I think the way that we think about personalization at Digio and what we've really moved into this idea of like marketing efficiency, we think about that as being able to gather the right and most valuable zero party and first party data about your site visitors, your customers, pre purchase from the moment they land on the site through campaigns, gamified experiences on the site, your identification tool. We do a lot of that at Digio, but then being able to leverage all this data across the marketing funnel to be able to craft what we think is more one-to-one experiences, but doing that at scale. So you can do this on site and through retargeting with your email, your SMS, your mobile apps, your ad platforms, all the things you're already using today. That's a little bit of a buzzword, high-level way of saying this, but I think to
Right.
kind of dig in a little bit deeper, we do a lot of things like quizzes, pop-ups, targeting through that with identification, gamified experiences. So you're really being able to understand who this person is from the moment they land on your site, putting them into a quiz funnel, putting them into a mini quiz, a pop-up experience, capturing data that actually then matters. So to kind of put this into a little bit more of a tactical sense, Andy Swim, they're a customer of ours, super awesome brand, and they're one of many examples of a brand who needs to know who the site visitor is from the moment they land to be able to communicate to them in a one-to-one way. Someone buying swimwear, for example, they might want to know, what body type are they, what size are they looking for, color, all the different things that if you're putting someone through a generic vanilla experience, you're not going to be able to get someone to take action on your site, be able to personalize the retargeting experience, all these things that you need to understand, like who this visitor is from the highest level, and then bringing that across the entire funnel.
So,
Um,
something as simple as like the typical brand saying like, "Give us your email, get 15% off your order." That's like a really classic play. Like it's more
sure,
like, "Hey, we're gonna actually ask you a couple more questions to earn a better discount to like learn about like, are you planning for the summer?" Like, I like using protein powder and subscriptions is a really great example. It's like,
sure.
"Hey, are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to gain muscle? Like, what are those objectives?" And then so you're saying something like, "So if I know what somebody's looking to for out of our product, we can create a segmented flow that's personalized to their needs about, hey, if you're living in California, you're preparing for the beach this summer, so you're trying to lose weight and you're going to use protein powder as a meal supplement. Here's a bunch of content and messaging that we prepared or a flow we prepared for that type of use case as opposed to some guy in Wisconsin who's just trying to beef up because he's trying to he's entering a weightlifting competition or something like that."
1,000%. You said it much better than I did, and that's exactly like I think
Just like to
the
clarify, just wanted to
no,
clarify.
no, no, but I mean, in all honesty, the average D2C consumer has been so ingrained into this attentive pop-up experience,
Right.
to they land on the site immediately 10% off, give me your email, give me your SMS, and then they're redirected, out of the site to their SMS inbox and then back to the site with no
Right.
understanding of like there's just a 10% off discount, but where do I go from here? What does the site experience look like from there? There's no data captured other than, so maybe kind of surface level first party data points and the email. For the brand, that's at a huge disadvantage to be able to then communicate to your point to someone in a much more different, more personalized way. We have all these tools at our disposal. Why aren't we using it to capture more data that actually makes us understand from the highest level who is this person and what are they actually looking for on my site? I think about this too. We're paying so much money to bring traffic to our site. SMS
Right.
engagement is down. Email subscribers are unsubscribing at higher rates now. The inboxes are flooded. How do you stand out? You need to be able to know more about a subscriber, and a customer really to be able then to just communicate to them like a human. I think at the end of the day, like if you understand, your supplements company, someone's age, someone's preferences, do they have an
Right.
existing routine, all the things like this stuff is not new to D2C, but now I think it's much easier than ever to be able to actually put that into play at an automated approach that you can actually scale some of these things too.
No, absolutely. And I think it's just kind of classic. Like you think of it, there's really two opportunities there. Is one, if you can gather more information before purchase, you can start to gauge the nature of the traffic that you're driving, right? The types of people that are involved. Are these the type of people that we're going to be effective at converting? But then
Mhm.
also you're giving your marketing and your growth team more ammunition on how they can talk to these people, right? So
Sure.
like I mean, I'm sure you've heard countless stories. I have over the years, countless D2C brands of like, in fact, just last night was, hey, we used to sell to 35 to 45-year-olds, but we've launched on this new channel and now we're getting a bunch of 25 to 35-year-olds that are coming to our site, and our messaging and our pictures and all this are like speaking to an older audience. And so now we have to shift some of what we're doing so that it feels more natural for them. And so it happens all the time. I'm curious, like from a quiz standpoint, like, so you've mentioned pop-ups, you've mentioned quizzes, you mentioned gamification. I'd love to hear a good example of each, if we could, and
Yeah.
putting you directly on the spot of maybe a use case or a story of how, or just doing it a little bit differently than the standard that's working for some of the clients that are using Digio. So
Totally.
pop up,
Yeah.
quiz, and then what was the third one I asked for? uh,
Gamification.
Gamification. Yes, yes, yes.
Cool. I'll start with quizzes because I think that's the one that everyone understands the highest level. One of my favorite examples is Death Wish Coffee. They're like one of the best examples that I
Right,
always talk about. They are a subscription focused brand selling awesome coffee. What they've learned from their quizzes is insane. I think just across, they have two quizzes with us at Digio. One is to point customers to the right flavor, like a Find Your Brew quiz, and then a second is a subscription focused quiz. I recommend anyone listening go to deathwishcoffee.com, go to the subscribe and save tab, and click on take the quiz because it's a really great example of I think a lot of the things that you talk about all the time, but also too really kind of like where data then activates into experience. So they ask a couple of simple questions. I mean, literally just what's your name? What frequency do you consume your coffee? What flavors do you like? Sort of just, do you like whole bean coffee? Do you like, K cup coffee? Do you like, all the different things that you could kind of figure out? But you can imagine someone coming to deathwishcoffee.com and not being asked those questions. There are a plethora of options and maybe overwhelm that can happen for a
right,
consumer to not make that purchase, or maybe they don't even have an awareness to the subscription offering.
right,
So what Death Wish has done is they put this quiz on the site, ask these questions. They're capturing all these valuable zero-party data points that then, when they capture the email address, go back to Klaviyo, they go back to their PostScript SMS platform. Any ESP SMS platform you're using, this also passes back. So all that then, I'll talk about that in a moment. But once they're redirected from that submit results page, they're taken straight to the Shopify checkout. And this is surpassing a results page even, great for
interesting.
conversions, but also too, it's just immediately getting them onto that subscription plan. So, obviously, this is a great customer experience because it's just a seamless checkout. It's really great too because they're able to then make that right recommendation for someone who might not, be aware of what frequency should I even be
Right,
ordering this coffee in. But I
right,
think where a lot of the magic sauce happens is all this data that Death Wish can then gather to retarget this customer. You talk about this too. It's customer experience with subscriptions. It's not just about the MRR. It's not
right.
just about the conversions, but all this data then lets Death Wish say, I know way more about, Matthew and his coffee habits, and we want to communicate email flows differently. Maybe we want to put them in different SMS segments. The messaging that you have throughout the life cycle becomes a lot more concrete, if you will, because you understand who Matthew is at a much more consumer and consumption based level.
Yeah, and not to get too into the weeds with it, it also gives you more data points to understand from a retention standpoint. Like if I'm running like Death Wish, I can now start looking at, hey, my 6 month subscribers, my 9, 12 month subscribers, what are attributes
Yep.
that from these types of subscribers that have taken this quiz before. Okay, now I actually want to start shifting my offers a little bit more. If somebody mentions they like whole bean and they drink 3 cups a day, that's our ideal subscriber experience. So I'm going to throw them a better special or better offer,
Hmm.
or know that month 3, 4, 5, they're really open to these types of upsells based on data that I've seen. So it's really like about like setting up
also like the long-term like understanding of customer behavior so that you can go back to the beginning as well and like make those types of offers and experiences. So yeah, yeah, we could go like super technical on that, but I love that experience too. And I feel so many brands are missing opportunity at gathering that with quizzes, which again is why I talk about it so much on this show, is just knowing how much coffee somebody drinks. Are you like, coffee maybe is probably universal. Matcha tea is one I harp on. It's like, if you're new to matcha tea versus somebody who's an experienced drinker, like that's a totally different type of buyer. And so knowing that means you can speak to them differently, right? Like a beginner matcha tea drinkers wants to just have their hand held, whereas an
Sure.
experienced one is like, you're going to try to show off some of your flavor profiles and stuff like this. Again,
100%.
very different marketing experiences.
Well, and I think like, even further, like, we're so revenue focused in D2C, of course, but at the end of the day, like this is an experience play because all the education that then can come from that, if you think about flows and how you might want to treat someone differently, someone who's consuming coffee every 90 days versus someone who's consuming coffee every 30 days in their subscription, like
Right.
there's a whole different kind of experience funnel there. I think the last thing I was going to add to that too, as you were talking about that, even informing buying decisions and like looking at where drop off is, who are your best customers, all the data that can come from that. I know a lot of our brands who use quizzes in this way make a lot of their buying decisions, and actually where they then will focus more on a core ICP. They might have thought their ICP was
Right.
45-year-olds in Iowa who are ordering coffee, but really they've realized it's this Gen Z audience, for example. So there is a lot of data that you can then use, not even just in your D2C funnel, but like and really like your overall just business operational kind of practices
Right.
too. So it's a big lift. I mean, there are so many examples of quizzes and subscriptions I could mention.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's just like helping you to understand more about your subscription customer to then make a good experience for them.
Absolutely. We'll talk a little bit more about quizzes too, but yeah, I'd like to hear some examples of pop-ups maybe that you see work just a little bit differently. And maybe that's where the gamification part comes in as well. But curious to see what's a different experience on a pop-up instead of just asking somebody for their email.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's two examples I'll mention quickly. The first one is more around targeting. So Digio has an identification product that everyone gets out of the box. And
That's
so
right.
what we've seen is that 63% of users, they say, are on Safari if they're on mobile, meaning we can't track them as easily. Your ESP might kill the cookies within 24 hours in most cases. So what happens is if Blake is browsing your site on day one on the phone and then 2 days later comes back on desktop, I might not even know who this person is. Or in the case of, say, I'm a subscription customer, and I come back, 1 month later on a different device and a different IP address, the site might not understand who I am. So what Digio's built is this cross-device working with your ESP solution to be able to have a permanent record of who you are. So I can understand, we're storing the server side, so I can understand, hey, Blake is back, 30 days later, and he's a subscription customer. Or in the case that maybe I'm not a subscription customer, but I've made 5 purchases, for example, and never subscribed, we can use pop-ups and targeting to create that experience of, hey, like it looks like you've been here a couple times. It looks like you made a couple purchases. Did you know we
Right.
offer this awesome subscription program? And we can do that through pop-ups, dynamic banners, hero sections, flyouts, all the things. So that's a great way of like, I know we oftentimes think that pop-ups are just list growth tools, but this is more of a CRO play, if you will, or even just a customer
Right.
experience play there. Another cool example I would say too is a brand called Seraphine that we work with,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a maternity clothes company. And a lot of our brands are doing this now. We call them mini quizzes, where what you talked about earlier, they're asking a question at the opt-in stage. So before they even capture an email, Seraphine, they're asking, hey, are you have you had your baby yet? Is your baby, when has it not come yet? Or do you want to see all the things? And so the recommendations that they then might make are totally different based upon,
Interesting.
if a woman's had her child or not yet. And then they're even capturing based upon that dynamically. If they've had the baby, when was the birthday? If they haven't had it yet, when is the due date? So in that opt-in funnel, they're gathering like 2 valuable points of data that then let
Right.
them redirect that visitor or create unique flows based upon that. So there are so many use cases, Seraphine maternity clothes, that's one use case, but any brand could be thinking about this. As I mentioned, like the attentive pop-up experience that we're so used to is great for list growth, but it's not really great for the customer experience. So those 2 extra points we've seen don't create friction and the opt-in rate for list growth, but it also is then actually helping conversions because again, we're understanding more about like who this
Right.
person is on day one when they opt in.
No, I love that. And yeah, I mean, I'd forgotten a little bit more about your identifier tool and the ability to like surface different like quiz experiences, banners, or pop-ups based on like who they are and stuff. And again, like it goes so far down the weeds of like how you can utilize this, but something just as simple as like, you know, you have like 3 different types of products that solve 3 different problems. You ask somebody in a pop-up, like, which problem are you facing? Instead of them trying to navigate your site to figure that out, you can get somebody to tell you that in a pop-up, and then you can redirect them to show them the actual product they need. Like, it makes a much easier experience. And I do think with subscriptions, especially, it's like, even though you might be adding a little bit of a different friction as part of that touch point, like people are in discovery phase. They're trying to figure out if what you can do is going to solve their problem. So being able to see that is really, really cool. I'm curious then if like how you've seen that work from a gamification standpoint then, or like, and again, like I know I do also actually, before you answer that, say, I just want to reiterate, I think that's an extra layer of personalization, right? Like when you're able to identify who people are, like that's a true personalized experience, as you know how many purchases they've made, you know if they're on a subscription or not, and you can show them an offer based on that. I really like that. But I'm curious if any other gamification examples you've seen via pop-ups or quizzes that are working for Digio customers.
Of course, yeah. There's a couple that come to mind. One of my favorites is Haven Athletic. They're doing some really cool stuff with not even really a quiz, but we call it like a product finder experience. And so, like, again,
Okay.
any brand could be doing this, whether you sell supplements, whether you sell handbags, whatever it is. If you go to havenathletic.com, like right below on the homepage, the second thing you'll see is they ask one question. It's like, what are you looking for? And it's, understanding, are they looking for duffel bags, for backpacks, for, any of the things they might sell, but then the use case for that. So I travel frequently, or I'm looking for an everyday bag or whatever. And in the case of Haven, they have a, not a massive product catalog, but something that, a little bit of a higher priced item. People might have hesitancy, or, buying a bag online is also not really that easy sometimes to kind of feel and understand what is the right thing for me. So it's sort of a gamified approach of they answer, literally one question, and then they're redirected to a custom collections page based upon what they told that little gamified experience. Great for forward motion, from getting from home page to a second page, which is ultimately, you look at drop off. That often happens with a lot of brands. The first page is typically not even gone past in a lot of cases. So great for that. That's a really cool gamified experience. I think quizzes can be gamified experiences too. So I think when you think about, we have a brand that we work with called Awe Inspired. They're a jewelry brand, actually. I'm not mentioning any subscription brands here. I know I'm probably not getting in the use cases with you
You're good.
specifically
It
on
all
subscription
works, man. They're
brands.
good examples. They're all good examples.
Um, on their list growth with Digio, actually what they're doing with pop-ups is sort of like a quiz where it's like a tarot card, and they have 3 options, and you can kind of click to reveal your tarot card, if you will, and based upon what you click, you get a unique experience based upon that, and then you can capture your email and do all the fun stuff, give you a discount from there. But I know spin to win has been a big thing, but this is sort of like a cooler
that's
way.
exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah, cooler way of doing spin to win.
It's just a different way of thinking about it. And like ultimately, when someone comes to your site, I feel like a lot of times what they're looking for obviously is something that's going to solve their pain or what they're looking for, but they're also looking for an experience that's memorable. And when you think about, everyone has that same 10% off discount that is just 2-tap opt-in, all that. The way that you beat that and become memorable, I think, is having some of these gamified moments. And it doesn't need to be crazy tarot cards or all this stuff. Like, there are little quick wins that you can implement super quick with tools like Digio, or not even to whatever you're using in your tech stack today.
It's so interesting because I was like, with Prime, we're recording this right day after Prime Day this year, and I was looking for a special on True Classic. So in a group chat, a friend was sharing a True Classic special on Amazon. I wear tall shirts just because of weird torso thing. TMI, sorry guys. Couldn't find it on Amazon. Go to the site. I'm hunting through it. Give up. Complain about it to my wife. My wife looks it up, finds something, shows it to me. And it's just kind of like this experience of like, how many times did I have to pick back up to try to like find what I was looking for? And how many people do they lose if are you losing off your site because they're not going to be that persistent? Like if they don't think you have it or don't think you can solve that problem. But for me, I keep thinking about this with subscriptions and stuff because there's so many use cases where I keep looking. I love it when I come and I see a different experience because it feels like you're taking my use case seriously, right? Like you're trying to help solve my problem, and if you can't, you'll tell me. Or if you can, you're going to show me that solution. So I think there's a lot to be said for like understanding more about some of the different what people are looking for, what they're trying to solve. Again, like with subscriptions, there's so many different supplements out there, so many different things that people are taking supplements for, and that they've tried before, and claims that are being made. So quizzes and that kind of gamification is just a really, really big opportunity to like change the experience. And that's really, really cool.
100%.
Okay. One of the things too I want to point out, because I was telling this to Blake when we were just kind of before we were recording. You guys have an incredible resource called 61 quiz examples, basically. And I'm going to link this to the show notes. I love showing this to people. I actually found it by accident. I was showing somebody your tool on a live call and just like clicking around randomly on the website and ended up on that. I was looking for some use case examples to just somebody didn't quite. I was trying to explain the power of quizzes to somebody and was lacking, I guess, a little bit in my own convincingness and then landed on this. And I was like, oh, jeez. Here are a lot of different examples of how you can use quizzes. I love it. Is that how long have you guys had that? Like, I know again you're a huge content guy. Like pushing for that type of content as a resource. Again, I think it's something that if you're thinking about quizzes, again, we'll have a link to in the show notes. You can go check it out.
I super appreciate that. That's really nice to hear. It's been an awesome resource for us. We've had that around for quite some time. We've continued to update it with fresh examples. And it's been a big thing for us of just educating the market on what great looks like. Like, yes, they are all Digio customers on there, but like at the end of the day, like we just want more people to understand that quizzes can apply for brands of all shapes and sizes, all use cases. And really to like showing what integrates with it. So if it's a subscriptions platform like a Skio, if it's a ESP like a Klaviyo, a Tapcart for your mobile apps, all that stuff, like we want to be able to show all those things. We just brought on Val Geisler not too long ago, former Klaviyo, by heart, awesome person all around. She's actually going to be helping me a lot with making this resource even better. So TBD when that will launch, but it's going to be more like how I built this style too. So I think going forward, we'll be able to help people understand even to like, how is Moon Juice powering their quiz? How is, all of Elevate, how are they powering their quiz? All this stuff. I want to be able to kind of have that in the future, for that. But it's an awesome resource. If you go to digio.com, it's literally on our top banner. You'll be able to see it and get access to that.
No, absolutely. And again, I should say, like, this isn't necessarily like the Digio fanboy podcast. This is more of the quiz fanboy podcast, but Digio's got some incredible resources. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Blake on the podcast. So regardless of what quiz tool you're using, it is a great resource. You can learn a lot. There's a lot of really good examples there. I'm curious, Blake, you've talked quite a few times about like, handing things off to an ESP, like what you're able to do with Klaviyo. And again, like this idea of marketing efficiency, more about, I should say one of the simplest examples I can think of, and I'd love to just hear you expound on other ways that this is being used, is the idea of you're a pet food company or a pet company, you're selling something to pet owners, that you find out what the name of the pet is at some point in the process, so that you can then personalize all your messaging after the fact of like, hey, Jimbo's pet bag of dog food is about to ship to you, or your order for Jimbo is on its way. Like, very simplest example of like how that can use. But I'd love to hear more about how you see that happening from a marketing efficiency personalization standpoint when you're able to collect more zero first party data.
Absolutely. I talk a lot about this. This is like, I could talk for hours about why this matters, but I think at the highest level, what I think this data, if you can capture in a quiz, like your dog's first name. I just took the Elevate quiz. Actually, I don't know if it's gone live yet. Maybe when it will, when this goes live, it'll be live. But that quiz asks, what's your dog's name? What breed is the dog? The weight of the dog, all these different kind of components. In the case of a pet company, I think they say like the most loved thing, by humans is like their own name. Maybe second is their dog's name. And so being able to even understand, that, hey, like Lila's dog food is about to ship or things like that, that's like a Chewy CX moment right there. But every brand can be able to do that in their Klaviyo emails, their SMS. you can take all this data and use dynamic inserts across copy, subject lines, CTAs, hide show blocks, even too. I talk about this a lot, but like, within a platform like Klaviyo, maybe because you know that your dog is, this is a little bit of a really esoteric example, but maybe, dogs that are under 45 pounds, you don't want to show a Great Dane as the,
Right.
image on the, the email, for example. There's so many examples that are probably better than that, but being able to take all this quiz data or anything you capture, zero or first party data, that creates more efficient marketing because you're showing
Right.
the customer more of what they told you they wanted to see. Aaron Orndorff talks about this a lot, and it was a mind-blowing experience for me, but he said, when someone clicks on something or tells you something about themselves, show them more of that because that's what makes them ultimately click, have a better experience, and feel heard at the end of the day. So I think we have all this data around us from all these different experiences. I think marketing efficiency more is being able to use that data to personalize that retargeting experience, personalize that on-site experience. Like these things can scale if you just know, what data you're out capturing. So in the case of like a pet food brand, even additionally, being able to, um, the data that you can then segment upon in your campaigns, in your automations, there's just so much around you. Like at the end of the day, like an unsubscribe costs a lot of money for a brand, and typically unsubscribes, I think, happen when obviously sales are being bombarded, but the content even feels uninspiring or not relevant to them.
Right.
I've been subscribed to, Chewy's mailing list for like years because it's just super relevant to all the things that I'm buying. I find a lot of value in those emails, and ultimately they're capturing all this data, they're progressively profiling me, and then showing me more of what I've told them I want to see. So I think marketing efficiency is just that, is to be able to get the data and then use it in your email, your SMS, your mobile apps, pushing that data into your ads, even too. If you're using Google Ads, you can do
Right.
that super easily.
Right.
Mobile apps, I think, as well, is something that's been really interesting for us because we know from our friends at Tapcart how, valuable an app subscriber is, but oftentimes, apps become, if you're using iOS, they even become uninstalled at some point if you're not using them. So how do you get
Right.
someone to use your app more frequently, know more about them, send great push notifications that are relevant, all those things.
Right.
This is just stuff that like now there's so much data around us. It just needs to be thought through in a way I think that you can activate it on that customer experience side with remarketing and all those things.
I'd be curious on like your opinion on some of that because we're calling it marketing efficiency, but if you're from a smaller brand, everything that Blake just said probably sounds incredibly overwhelming and hard to get to if you're doing some of that. Where do you see the drop? I'm at a certain revenue size or a certain customer size. I need to start doing more segmenting on flows and personalization on the back end. So like less about data capture, more about how many flows do I want to go after? Because if I'm only, if I've got 500 subscribers and I'm picking up 20, 30 a month, maybe it doesn't make sense for me to segment out for 4 different personas, even though I might have 4 personas. Like, where do you see like
Sure.
the return on effort on that start to be like really important?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it can really depend on a lot of factors. Are you a D2C brand who, sells super high AOV items and suddenly, you don't have, 40,000 email subscribers, and maybe you're like a sauna company that only has maybe a couple dozen customers come through every single month through your funnel. And so maybe those higher value customers warrant a segmentation, whereas maybe you are a, $30 a month subscription company, and like you need to really find, hey, at maybe at 10, 20, 30,000 email SMS subscribers, it makes more sense to be granular. But I really look at it as there's a couple of really basic things that you can do from an automation and flow perspective that will actually just, you don't need to worry about having 40 segments for your campaigns, even if you can just get the baseline of automation. So say you have a quiz and you have the flow that then comes after that. Any quiz platform should be able to do most, of
Right.
these automated flows. But say in the case of Moon Juice, say that they know, that there are like 4 distinct groups of people that come through for like, brain fog, for gut health, all these things that you can have flows for that. So no matter what, you're just preemptively planning for people to go through that unique experience. You create it once and they go through it, and that's just kind of set it and done. No flow is set it and forget it, but I feel like you can at least have,
Right.
that sort of kind of segmentation there. But I would really say at the bare minimum, get your automations in. And then I think if you're sending campaigns, I would still look into, with knowing how expensive it is to acquire email and SMS subscribers. If your email SMS list is 100 subscribers, maybe not. But if you're at least, at 1,000 plus, I would think it's valuable to be able to personalize some of that and let the data tell you too. I think at the end of the day, like I remember as a retention marketer, like I had all these lofty, ambitious plans to create, 40 segments of people. And you realize that only like one person clicks on it and it's not, like that
Right.
was a total waste of time. So I think, I don't know if I answered your question, but I do believe that it's more around it kind of depends. It's kind of that answer, I would
Well,
say.
no, I think you were, and the reminder too of like the ability to use dynamic fields in Klaviyo. So while I might not necessarily building out a ton of different flows for subscribers on the back end, I could have a single flow that has dynamic fields and some dynamic content based on what people select. It's essentially kind of like building it once for several use cases. I would say too, like harp on a lot because I did a recent podcast on this, and the question around email is always like a lot of brands just don't want to email subscribers because it drives churn. Like there's a
Sure.
really strong cause and effect there. But so one of the things that like harp on all the time is like, okay, if you're going to onboard or welcome a subscriber, like you're going to send a generic series about the brand, about some of your products. But if you know what they bought, right? If you have a hero product, for example, it should be all about that hero product. And then you could do a generic one for everything else, right? Like that's a very simple choice to start making. If you're going to send an upcoming order notification email, what other information can you include? Like a pet name, like, if you understand the use case, like it's weight gain or weight loss, like muscle gain or weight
Sure.
loss, like, can you add in a little bit of content or resource or, your, bodybuilder Facebook group that you guys have, right? So like I think there's a lot of different ways you can just start making some better choices on adding some personalization to people based off of what's working. But again, like you mentioned, like the 40 segments, like one person's clicking on that, and again, it does, you want it to make sense. Like again, if you have 3 SKUs and one does really better than the other 2, then start with the one that does better than the other 2, right? And then you can
Totally.
work on building some of those other things.
I think, to just add to that really quickly too, it's like, the whole post-purchase flow, I know it's just like everyone has their own golden rule of how many emails, all the things you send. And like,
Right.
what you mentioned too is like people are a little afraid when they start seeing more emails go out, unsubscribes do go up. I love what you mentioned about, adding in little moments to say you use order tracking like Wondermint, Malomo, Aftership, any of those platforms, use some of that data that to maybe make a little bit of a more personalized tied show block in there, or maybe something that you can dynamically insert about, their dog's name, or those types of little things where you're still personalizing and making that attempt to have something that feels unique to that subscriber, that shopper.
Right.
But it might not need to be its own standalone email as well. So I think it's just like the little things that go a long way. And at the end of the day, like we're trying to extend the life when we talk about retention marketing, trying to extend the life of that, subscriber. I think the best way to do that is just, it's not so much the number of emails you send. I think it's the quality of the emails that you send and that they find
I
value
agree.
and those types of things too.
I agree. Okay, Blake, I've got, as we're wrapping up, I've got 2 final questions for you. The first one is just going to be like any last tips on marketing efficiency, personalization, anything you'd like, or even just again, recapping what should somebody who's listening to this or reading the newsletter take away and that point that they should be thinking about to do that in a better way.
For sure. I think, just in a climate where, it's difficult to get someone to stay engaged on your retention list, email, SMS, your mobile apps, retargeting even too feels vanilla in a lot of ways when you think about getting someone back to site. Marketing efficiency is really a way, I think, for you to send more meaningful engagement off-site with retargeting, and then the on-site experience that then you can activate. We talked about a ton of examples today with personalization, with pop-ups and quizzes and gamification and all these things that we're able to understand about who this person is as they come to the site. But being able to put that data back into your retention platforms, like this is a holistic way of thinking about marketing. This is
Right.
not just about a quiz. This is not just about a pop-up. Um, this is talking about data and personalization. That's like really as high level as marketing efficiency is. I think about it just, send less, but send the right communications. And I think like when we think about like batch and blast is definitely like a buzzword. It's long dead in a lot of ways. Like this is a way to be able to kind of mitigate that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like understand more about who your customer is and make better marketing decisions across that, make better operational decisions across that too. So I think it's more of a way of thinking about your D2C funnel and not so much just a single product. So I think about that as like just the kind of nuts and bolts of marketing efficiency. And, we help brands every day do just that. So I think anyone thinking about ways to kind of merge the gap between their acquisition team and their retention team and their CX team and their operations team and all these different kind of subsets, data is really at the core of that. I think that's like the kind of
Right.
common thread across all the things. So just having tools in place that can do that, I think is really, really important. So yeah, that's kind of my final takeaway, I would say, for marketing efficiency.
No, I love that actually. And I had a conversation with somebody who used to work at Owlet, a big brand here in Utah, that started here in Utah, and they were running NPS scores every month and then trying to figure out what department or who they could do to like try to improve that and that's how they got like the whole company invested. And you mentioned like all these different aspects of a business, and that's what that made me think of, as having better data allows you to understand why so and so might be voting you lower on an NPS score or not. Okay, and then so my final question is, because you're a big content guy. We had a recent episode as well come out talking about content creation. There's a lot of founders, whether they're SaaS agency or brand side, like on this. So I'd love to get, as somebody who's trying to create content as well, any tips or maybe a nudge to get people to start creating more content for their own personal brand, and or if they own their brand, for their brand.
Yeah, for sure. I started a whole business on this called Content Army. Actually, just passed the keys off to my co-founder Adam Kitchen. So I would
Right.
follow Adam Kitchen first and foremost if you're looking to
Yeah, he's great.
what does great founder brand look like, whether you're in B2B SaaS or you're an e-com founder, even if you're just a an individual contributor on a team. I built my career, and I'm not ashamed to say this, in the back of LinkedIn. I went from that struggling musician to where I am now. I really believe in large part due to investing in LinkedIn and social and sharing who I am. And I've worked exceptionally hard. I'll say that with no shame. But I also think that I owe a lot of that to building my own personal brand as well. And so I think the best tips that I can give is have a unique point of view on something and then just share that with the world. Whether that's writing long form content on LinkedIn and creating videos about you scaling the brand from 6 to 8 figures, anything that you can do to share your story. People like to connect with real human
They do.
people at the end of the day, and who are also just transparent about like what it's like, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly. I think what we've seen, even just like from my own side of Digio within like B2B SaaS and ecom SaaS, is like more people now kind of building like a face of the company, if you will.
Right.
And I kind of feel like I was early innings at this at Attentive, and even Wonderment, being kind of like that evangelist for the company. But I think whether you're in B2B or ecom or any of the things, having an evangelist face, Jake Carls, whether you like him or not, is a really great example of someone who's doing this for Midday Squares. Someone who's just sharing the journey,
He's
documenting
awesome.
it. Jake is awesome. I had him on my podcast a while ago. I absolutely, that energy is infectious.
Right.
And I think like that type of, sharing the story. Content is, one of the things that it's evergreen. It's always going. And I think, beating the drum and showing up every day, like another great example, like I at IQ Bar, I can't remember his name right now. Will Nitza.
Will, yeah.
Yeah.
That's who
Will
I was
Nitza.
thinking too.
Yeah, Will, I had him on the podcast a while ago too. And like those types of like, I could pick on Eric Bandholz, Heath Riles. There's so many people.
Yeah.
Like just being a face for the company has so much value. So I would say, speed a lot there, but follow Adam Kitchen. He's got a lot more tips than I do on how to
Yeah.
actually make value out of that.
Well, and I would just say too, like you said, be unique, but I think that when you start talking about your story, you are unique as a person, but what you're doing is something that other people can identify with, right? Like if you're a single mom who was worried about the health of her kids, who started a kids skincare company, right? Like, Auto Brush, like they started like trying to make like it easier for kids to brush their teeth, right? Like those are universal issues, but when you tell it from a unique standpoint of like, this is my journey, my story, and what we're doing, then people really do resonate with that from the story place. So that's great.
100%. And I think last thing I was going to add to that is like, content. If you're a D2C brand sharing your story, that's a lot of great content to be able to share with your audience. And like there's the whole audience play, but then if you're looking to raise money, you're looking to get acquired, all the things like there's a lot of tertiary benefits that come from sharing your story and being vulnerable about it too.
Right. Great. Awesome. Well, Blake, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. Again, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. One I think a lot of brands are going to take a lot of value from. For those of you listening, I do want to mention I will drop links in the show notes to Blake's LinkedIn because I highly recommend following him there. To the 61 quiz templates that Digio has because it's an amazing resource. And yeah, for anybody else, LinkedIn's the best place to connect with you, right? That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Always there multiple times a day.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. It's great. So again, and thank you, Blake, so much for coming on the show. And yeah, that's it for this week's dose. Please stay tuned for another episode of Subscription Prescription.
And one final thing, be sure to check out Upzelo if you're looking for a better loyalty option for your customers. Be sure to use Dr. Sub as a code to get 25% off for 3 months and get everything set up for free for you by the Upzelo team. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.